One thing I didn't really go too in depth on in my ranking video for DC speedsters due to time constraints was the nature of the Black Flash. He is, in very simple terms, a form of death that hunts Speed Force users, meaning he is a form of death, one of the Endless, that brings death to the Flash family. Death of the Endless is more of a fundamental truth or principle that not only precedes, but also underlies all other aspects of death in the Presence's plan. I'm saying this here and now because this factors into the entire essence and nature of this discussion. Back in post-crisis, Wally, who was once Kid Flash and was the current Flash, starts by grimly narrating that legendary speedsters like Barry Allen, his predecessor, Johnny Quick, who's basically the Jiraiya or Roshi of speedsters, and even Savitar were all one by one ultimately doomed and claimed by this force of nature sent by the Speed Force, setting the tone that Wally is seemingly next to be claimed and that his time is running short. Initially, Wally was its target, but in a strange twist of fate, his wife Linda Park died instead by a flash of lightning from the Black Flash in an attempt to claim Wally. Wally got disconnected from the Speed Force after his wife was killed by a bolt of lightning from the Black Flash in an attempt to claim Wally. This event deeply traumatized him and severed his connection to the Speed Force, or so he thought. A lot of people don't acknowledge this for the specific arc, but there are a lot of personal stakes and elements of vengeance at play here, rather than this just being a story about survival. Recognizing the hopelessness of the situation, and realizing that speed, once Wally's greatest asset, is now just buying time from death in the best way that he can in his current condition, not safety from death's claim. The Black Flash is basically correcting its failure to take Wally in a relentless fashion. As this goes on, many ongoing deaths transpire in front of him, and this causes him to regain or reestablish his link to the Speed Force naturally, and not just his grief over Linda, but also the ongoing deaths of speedsters at the Black Flash's hand. This sort of fuels his resolve and triggers a visceral reaction or emotional outburst, and this is visualized by the electricity taking over his eyes. This shows that the Speed Force is not just an energy field that gives motion to the multiverse, or even in the current Flash run, implied to be the, quote, fractal foam of all things, but something literally intertwined with Wally's emotions and something that responds to his emotional state. Once he regained his power and speed, Wally was back in motion at full capacity, at least at the time, and embraced the challenge in front of him, outrunning death. Wally even gets thrilled or exhilarated at the fact that he's testing his limits in the face of death for speedsters. So in Mark Millar's Flash run in Post-Crisis, the resolution is not defeating death through power, but outspeeding and outpacing it to a place it can't exist. He runs to the end of time where nothing remains, not even death itself. What almost nobody brings up or fails to realize is Black Flash in this run that many people still appeal to almost 40 years later couldn't even exist in locations where time had no meaning. Whereas we have numerous instances of Death of the Endless being able to exist not only outside but beyond time. Plus, when Wally says he ran to where death ceased to exist on a conceptual level, he's either A, ignorant of Death of the Endless's true nature, or B, a contradiction in the established metaphysics of DC for the sake of storytelling. Around the end of Mike Carey's Lucifer run, Lucifer Morningstar became something outside of the Presence's or Yahweh's plan, but despite this, he still acknowledges Death's autonomy and domain. Even if you just evade it for the time being and doesn't resort to making bold claims like cheating the finality of all things or mocking her like the Silkman he ran into, it is consistently treated as this patient and inescapable force that will eventually have its claim even if you're outside of Yahweh's plan for creation and destiny. This is just how Death of the Endless is designed to work, despite Lucifer being more powerful than all of the Endless in terms of physical stats. Current Wally, whether it's Dawn of DC or Rebirth, is stated to be the fastest on several occasions. After the Flashpoint, it's verbatim stated that he has a greater connection to the Speed Force than what he initially had pre-Flashpoint, entering into a, quote, new dimension of speed. And he's only been getting faster, which correlates with power, ever since. It's gone to the point where he can just step outside his own narrative, but also go beyond the source. He wasn't even doing things like this with the Mobius chair amp, despite it granting him a vast pool of knowledge and information about the multiverse. Not that long ago, it was stated he's an unbroken waveform in the fractal foam of all things, by the archangels, as I said earlier, who are these conscious hypergeometries and cosmological abstractions so complex they become irreducibly simple. Meaning Wally's very being as a rhythm or frequency is able to stay cohesive or unbroken, as the text describes, to the point that he's practically the speed force made manifest or an emanation of the deep change, which is what the speed force is. Not only this, but all speedsters use the powers of the archangels, which cause reality to crumble in this current Flash run, and all speedsters includes the Black Flash, even though he's just a lesser form of Death of the Endless. This is important because the archangels literally glaze Wally as this sacred and perfect conduit of the speed force, even after they messed with his power and made him hollow, and go on to give him deep insights or truths about the true functionality of the DC cosmos and calling on him to repair it. Compare all of this to someone who is just an incarnation of Death of the Endless for speedsters that requires a speed force to be properly stabilized to even function properly and can't even exist where time has no meaning. Yet people go to things like this statement in Williamson's Flash run to still argue that Black Flash is comparable to Wally. For starters, this is not Wally, it's Barry. So that not only exposes who actually reads these comics, but grammatically and semantically, when Barry says the Black Flash is the fastest thing he's ever encountered, it doesn't inherently mean Black Flash is faster than him. I noticed some people will actually use this statement to claim Barry is slower than the Black Flash in this era, which is a non sequitur. All Barry is saying is that among all things he's come across at this point, the Black Flash is the fastest among them. This is the only comparison being made, and nothing is stated about Barry's own speed in this scan, which gets contradicted if you take what he says to the utmost literal interpretation. As the Tempest says, Wally is the fastest entity in the multiverse, which Wally himself and Barry don't contest against. Therefore, it does not follow or confirm whether the Black Flash is faster than Barry, nor does it really follow or confirm that the Black Flash is faster than Wally in this scan alone. Barry is the only character shown that can even somewhat keep up with current Wally before he starts getting increases, amps, and other powers that boost his speed beyond what it was prior. You also see arguments like Wally simply outsmarted him in this specific run, which, to be fair, the Black Flash is mainly this relentless predatory form of death with one sole mission in mind, which still holds true in modern eras, but he is sentient and intelligent, as Wally monologues to himself that he's picked up on his tactic of running towards the end of all things, saying it's realized what I'm up to and wants to close the gap, which not only proves he has intelligence, but destroys the argument that Black Flash is a brain-dead speedster, at least when the speed force is stabilized. But Wally has gotten way faster, better inverse scaling, and many power-ups since this era, as I just went over. So, to be honest, if current Wally were to go up against this specific version of Black Flash he did in Post-Crisis, whether that's his appearance in Williamson's Flash run or the Fastest Man Alive story, or even his return in Rebirth, it wouldn't be close at all, and it's 100% in his favor. You'll see many people appeal to Mark. However, given the nature of the Black Flash's existence, being this force that will always come back even if it temporarily dies, it's literally up to and on the writer if they want to make Black Flash go beyond its current threshold. But in regards to both up-to-date versions of the characters, I simply ask you, the audience, what is more reasonable to be the case, or what is a more appropriate explanation to the nature of this debate? Current Wally being faster than the Black Flash, since it's irrefutable, since he's the fastest he's ever been and is simply evading his eventual and inescapable claim by death, taking the nature of death into consideration in DC here, to an on-panel depictions of speed and intelligence allowing that. Or Black Flash being faster than Wally despite numerous times of not being able to claim him when he had everything in his favor to do so. I've suggested the former, and I think a lot of people don't understand that if Wally's truly not at the end of the rope, he'll simply evade death in the form of the Black Flash via speed and his intelligence, albeit he'll just be postponing his eventual and inevitable claim that he will meet at his true final moment. I also don't think it's logical in any shape or form to claim someone is faster than you despite consistently being evaded in direct pursuits. You kind of have to prioritize these abstract or metaphysical titles over narrative consistency, and feats of Wally having better speed feats than the Black Flash, and being in a space completely beyond him in terms of speed, at least currently. How I see it, death in DC can be inevitable in concept, but not always inevitable in practice against certain individuals. This is best shown with Lucifer Morningstar, Michael, the Silkman, and here, Wally West. All of them have evaded or postponed the inevitable just through their own different means. And with Wally, it's clearly his speed allowing for that to be the case. So, while not a rivalry in the traditional sense like Batman versus the Joker or Goku versus Vegeta, this dynamic between Wally West and the Black Flash, where this inevitable force of nature pursues life, is one of my favorites and something that still captivates many fans of DC almost 40 years later after it was introduced. It's a pretty similar dynamic that Silver Surfer and Galactus generally have, and this discussion in DC is one of the more popular ones outside anything Superman or Batman related. I noticed you guys really liked my speedster ranking video, so I decided to make this video for you guys since it's something still talked about. But I have Wally winning this completely. Bye.